Okay, so let's see what was done to the character's face. As you can see, I've added a few more controls. So we had the controls for the eyebrows, both the individual and global controls for each side. We also have controls for different parts of the mouth, as you can see. I've added a couple to the nostrils, so we can get some movement on this part of the face too. And there's also, of course, a global control. And I added a couple controls for the cheekbone area, so you can better shape this part of the face too if needed. And obviously, how many more controls you could need on a given character's face, as we mentioned before, depends on what kind of expressions the character is going to have to be able to display. In this case, for the purpose of our exercise, this is going to be just enough. And you could have added, for example, some controls for the forehead if you wanted to wrinkle it. But in the case of this particular mesh, the forehead is not modeled to allow that. So we're not adding any of those. Usually you can also add controls to all the edge or the border of each eyelid. In my case, well, I haven't done those, but feel free to go ahead and experiment on your own, adding controls where you need them. So that's pretty much it. Now, what would be next? Well, first, let's take a look at what we have. One thing I'm going to do is just take these two weight containers that I hadn't used and drop them in here. And while we're at it, I'm going to mention something. When you use these, the script we've been using to mirror our weight containers, one thing that is very important is that, as you know, we have to select the vertices and then the weight maps that you need to mirror. So you select the vertices and the source weight map and the destination. The containers must be selected in the vertex map list. You cannot select the items because selecting the items will not result in a mirror operation. Basically, the button will do nothing. You have to come here under weight maps and select them here directly. And then the operation will be successful. Otherwise, it won't work. And as you can see in our schematic, let me go back to that. All the influences are already set for all the weight maps and their respective locators. So everything is rigged. And now that we have that, well, there's still a couple of things we have to take care of. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test my entire character rig and see how things are looking. So for example, let's take the global control and move our character, and well, we get something quite funny here. These controls are moving, the face of the character is distorting. So what's going on? Well, we've talked about this before, and basically what's going on is that our character's mesh is being double transformed. It's being transformed by its by the influences resulting from the body bind, and it's also being transformed by the inheritance coming from up the hierarchy. So that's why we have a double transform on it. So what we have to do, just go to the channel list and turn off the inheritances for all the transforms on this mesh. So as you can see, once I do that, if I move my character, the mesh now is only transformed by the joints that are influencing it. We still have a problem with the face, oh, and the eyes too. So let's fix those. Let's take the eyes and we'll do the same. Okay, now what about the character's face? Well, what's going on here? What's going on is that our character has all the vertices in this area also being double transformed. They're being transformed once by the body bind, and then a second time by the face deformations. So let's take a look at what that means. First thing, I'm gonna clean up this workspace because it's really messy. There's a bunch of stuff here. So first, let's take all the influences that are related to the face that we've worked on so far and put them in the normalized folder for the face. So let's drag and drop these guys there. As you can see, things start to take shape over here. And then all these two belong to the face. So now we have something that resembles the face right there. Okay. And lastly, these two. Oh no, these are the eyes. Those are okay. We don't need to move those. I'm gonna create a folder for all the weight containers because I don't want to see them over there. So let's create a deform folder, not a normalizing folder, just a deform folder, which is a general purpose folder just for organizing purposes. And let's call it deform folder face weight containers. And let's put this guy has a wrong name, and this guy too. Let's put all these guys inside that folder. We'll see what to do about these guys later on, but the idea is just to have this properly organized. Now we have this face normalizing folder, which is normalizing all the areas that we're affecting on the face of the character. If I disable it, you will notice that the face of the character goes back to normal. So that's why we have this double transform. So what we need to do now is I am going to basically just combine the deformations coming from the body bind with the deformations from the normalizing folder for the face. I could basically just take all these influences and drag and drop them into the body bind folder. You could do that if you want. There's no problem in doing that. But I want to keep them separate so I know where my body bind influences are and where other influences are living. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create another normalizing folder. We're going to call this one normalizing folder Ace. Okay, and I'm going to put both the face weight containers and the body bind in there. So let's drag and drop the body bind folder first, and let's add the face folder now. And now everything is being normalized. Oops, it didn't go in. Oh, I added the weight containers folder. That's not the one we want. Is this one. There you go. And as you can see now, everything is properly being normalized again. And we have our character's face back. So now our character is behaving properly. Okay, let's see what else we need to do to finish our character's facial rig. And the first thing you'll notice is that if I screw up my time slider again with our test animation, the character's face is getting very distorted. So this is definitely something that I wouldn't want for the character to go through. So the reason for this is that the controls for the face are not following the rest of the rig yet. So that's the first thing we need to take care of. And why are the vertices sticking in the middle of space? Well, the reason is, if you remember, we took our face weighting that we did, and we're normalizing against the entire body bind weighting. So what that is doing is these vertices are being 50% influenced by the head joint and 50% influenced by the rest of the head controls. So first thing we need to do is get the controls to follow. That's pretty obvious, and it's going to be very easy for the most part, since we have all these groups already created. I can just go and directly dynamic parent most of them to the correct joint to make them follow. And I said for the most part this is going to be simple, but there's one that is going to be a little bit more involved, and that's the mouth. And I'm going to show you why at the end. Actually, I'm going to leave it for last. So let's start by the face group. And this guy right now only has the cheekbones. So since it's mostly the formers that apply to vertices that should follow the head joint, I'm just going to take them and dynamically parent them to the head joint. So that's done. Let's see how that looks when the character moves. As you can see, the cheek, the formers, and controls are following properly. So that was easy. Let's do now the nose, which is mostly nostrils and that. So that needs also to follow the head joint. Now we have one eyebrow and the other one. Let's check that out. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And I can actually still control everything here properly. As you can see. So that's good. What else do we need to do? Well, now it's the mouth that is a problem. So let's take a look at the mouth. Why did I leave it for last? Well, it's basically because the mouth is divided into two parts. Well, actually three. We have controls on the top of the mouth that need to follow the head joint. And we have controls at the bottom of the mouth that need to follow the jaw. And then we have the corners of the mouth that need to do something entirely different, which is something you'll see in a second. So how are we going to get all this to work properly? Well, we're going to have to divide the contents of this folder into 3 different subgroups, okay? So that we can actually get these controls and these locators to work properly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the locators for the mouth deformers. As you can see here, they need to be matched to this guy precisely, so we don't get any funky value changes in the channels once we start moving parenting things around. Okay, so I'm going to make a note of this guy. So we need 3 group locators just for the deformers themselves, one for the corner and one for the top, one for the bottom. Let's create a group locator, and for now I'm gonna make it, no, actually where he was fine. We don't want to make him a child of this, because I can actually tell right now that this parent item is going to disappear. So, but for now I need him there. So I'm gonna go into setup mode and grab my group locator and match it onto the position of the item that is currently the parent of all these guys. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate him twice. So one is going to be the parent centered top mouth deformers. The other one is going to be the parent center bottom mouth deformers, and the third one is going to be a parent center mouth corner deformers. Okay, and now what we're going to do is move these guys to their respective new parent. So we can take the two corners and just move them. I'm keeping an eye on the channels because nothing here should in theory change, because they're going to a new parent that is exactly at the same location as their previous parent. So there's an infinitesimal value change over there, but that's not going to be a problem. Now we need to take the bottom ones, those three, and move them over to the bottom mouth deformers, and then the three top ones need to go to the top mouth deformers. Okay, so that's going well so far. Let's get out of setup mode and see. Yeah, no changes at all. Let's do the same now for the controls. Okay, so let's get this parent right there, which is right here, and we're gonna create a new group locator, and I'm in setup mode, so I'm just gonna match it directly over here. There he is. The reason why I'm using group locators instead of standard locators is just because group locators have no visual representation in the 3D viewport, so I'm not cluttering my 3D viewport with more stuff. And let's duplicate him 2 more times. We're going to be doing the same. Parent center top mouth controls. Parent center bottom mouth controls. Parent center mouth corner controls. Okay, so that's good, and we're going to take these guys and move them to their respective group. So these are the mouth corner controls. They go here. This is for the top lip. This one goes center top, and this one goes in center bottom. Okay, so far so good. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 more locators that are the ones that are going to actually hold the constraint, and I'm going to parent each side. Well, actually it's going to be 3. I'm going to parent each side to their respective locator. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to show you why I'm doing that, because that way I don't have to apply 6 parent constraints. I can apply just 3 parent constraints. So let's create 1 locator and move it under the mouth group, and we're going to call this one constraint center top mouth, and let's duplicate them again. Constraint center bottom to the bottom of the mouth, and this one is constraint center mouth corners. There we go. Okay, now the thing I need to decide is where I'm gonna match these guys, because unfortunately all the other groups don't really match. For example, let's take the mouth corner controls. It's right here in the middle, but for the deformers it's right there at the back. So what do I do? Well, let's hide the oh, we need this guy as reference. I'm gonna match them to the deformers. For me, those are basically more important. I don't want to worry about the controls, because the controls anyway, we always zero them out. We zero out their transforms, so we don't have to worry about that part too much. I want to worry more about the deformers, because any change in transforms on those, that can have some serious consequences. On the controls too, because they control the deformers anyway, but I think I prefer to move my new locators over to the location of where the deformer parents are, and then just zero out any offsets that I will have on the control parents. So let's do that. This is the mouth corners. I'm going to match it over to this guy. Okay, let's hide the reference that I used. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, first this guy, just to make sure I have a clean slate. Let's zero everything. Fine. Now let's take first the mouth corner deformers, move them over here, and let's make sure nothing changed in the channels. That's great. And now let's take the mouth corner controls and move them over here, and that is going to cause a slight offset, as you can see right there. The reason is, well, they're not at the same location, as you can see. This is where the constraint is, the constraint, and then this is where the controls are. So all I'm going to do is zero this out, okay, for this parent. I don't need to worry too much. These guys are not zeroed out, so let's do that too. And let's get out of setup mode and make sure nothing is going wonky there. Okay. Everything is still good. Perfect. Okay. And now, let's go back to setup mode. I can take our new constraint item, and since this is for the mouth corners, yeah, this one I'm going to leave for last also. You're going to see why. It's going to be easier to start with the top and bottom controls for the mouth. So let's do those next. I'll leave this guy for the end. So let's start with the top, for example. And this guy, let's see what we're going to be matching it to. So we have the top mouth controls are located here, and the deformers are there in the back. So let's do the same. Let's take our top mouth and match it to the back one. Okay, and we're going to take control top mouth deformers and move it there. Perfect. And we're going to take the top mouth controls and move it under it. And again, we're gonna check our channels. So this guy, zero out everything. So the controls have an offset, and the deformers don't. Good. Okay, so before we do anything else, let's go out of setup mode and make sure, again, nothing jumps or moves away or anything like that. Okay, so now that we have this constraint object, we can just take the entire thing and dynamically parent it to the head joint. And let's see what that does. We should see everything for the top of the mouth following the head. And as you can see, it does work. Perfect. So let's do the bottom ones, which is this guy right here. So let's see where are the items that we would need to match to. So our mouth deformers are there in the back. The controls are in the front. So we're gonna again match to the back. There we are. So now we take our mouth deformers, move him, mouth controls, move him. Let's take our constraint object and just zero everything. Let's take our mouth controls, zero that, no changes here. Again, check setup, out of setup mode, everything is okay. Now let's grab this constraint object, dynamically parent it. But this guy, since this guy is the bottom controls, this guy we need to dynamically parent it to the jaw. Okay? Because we want these guys to follow when we open the jaw of the character, which is the case now, as you can see. And I can continue rotating the character and everything is perfect. So the only thing that is left is the corners of the mouth. Okay. So for the corners of the mouth, there's something interesting that needs to happen here. These guys, what I want them to do is to be able to follow both the head and jaw controls, so that when I open the jaw of the character, these guys move down to meet them halfway. Okay, so I want them to rotate, well, to follow halfway the position of the lower lip controls and the upper lip controls. Now, the thing is that if I just do a, let's collapse this. If I take this guy and I just add a position constraint that would move him in between this position and this guy's position, I'm not really going to get what I want, because that's a linear motion. It's going to be a linear trajectory between both positions. And what the jaw is doing is rotating. So I need to describe not a straight line, but an arc. Okay? So how am I going to do that? Well, it's not going to be that complicated, actually. What I need to do is use another locator. Let's go back into setup mode. And I'm going to make this guy child of... Actually, I might not need another locator. Let's see. Where's this guy? Yeah, he's going to have a new parent. This mouth corners constraint. And he's not going to be a constraint anymore. Let's see what he's going to do. I'm going to put this new locator in the mouth group. And I'm going to match it over to the jaw. Okay? And now I'm going to take him and I'm going to rotation constrain it between both of those guys with compensation on. Okay? And I'm also going to position constrain it to the jawbone and also scale constrain it in case I scale my character. Okay? So what that did is, at the moment I rotate my jaw open, you can see that that locator is rotating halfway. Okay? It's rotating just half of that, which is what I want. So let's call this guy rig center mouth corner rotation. And we might not even need to do a constraint. Let's call this then parent. I'm just going to make him a child of this new locator. I really don't need to zero out the transforms because we're not going to be using him for anything. But now, as I rotate my mouth, you can see the corners doing exactly what they need to do. Well, we have something funny there with one of them. Let's see what's going on there. Looks like they're being rotated out of place. Let's check that out. Let's see why. So we have this guy. Oh, this guy is not rotating properly. Hold on a second. Let's do a little test animation for the jaw so we can debug what's going on. And I'm gonna do it just right after all the body movements so that we can get a more clear view of what. Let's start here. Frame 330. Create a keyframe. 345. Open the jaw like that. Okay. So let's take a look at each one of these guys. Let's go to front view. And as you can see, this guy's rotating in a weird way. And let's see why that is. Let's check our rotation constraint. It probably has to do with these offsets that are being stored. So we're going to try a different approach. We're going to rig it manually in the schematic. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to go back to setup mode. For now, let's delete those those constraints, and let's see how we're going to do this. It's going to be probably not that difficult, but let's do this again. So this guy is a child of this group right there. Sorry about that. Let's zero everything out first, so we have clean channels to work with. So he needs to rotate half of what the jawbone is rotating, right? But that is with respect to the head joint. So I think I'm gonna just wire it directly to the control right here, so that he rotates half of this guy's values. So let's go to our rigging workspace. And let's go to the head and face rigging workspace, and let's add our control and its rotations. So we're getting right now 0 degrees, and let's add our new rigged item. So what we're going to do is let's try a plain divide by 2 operation, or multiply by 0.5, whatever you want to do. It's the same for each axis, okay? And let's see if that works. So let's, I usually prefer to do multiplies by 0.5. So let's duplicate that a few more times. Now let's wire everything. This one is going to be for X, for Y, and for Z. Sorry. And again, we wire them back over here. So let's see if that works. Frame 330. Yeah, that seems to be working. So that did the job. Now there is one problem still though. Those are not following anything yet. Okay, so we need to take this guy, which is the parent of everything, as you can see, and him we are going to parent constrain to the head joint. Let's go back to setup mode. So let's make sure that things still work properly. The face mustn't look weird at all. Sorry again. Who is this person? These guys, we're not using them anymore, so I'm gonna get rid of those in a second. These two guys. I just want to make sure that the rest of the face looks fine, but that the jaw rigging is still good. I would say that looks pretty good. Let's try other rotations. Yeah. Well, that takes care of this part of the face rig. I can still independently control my lower lips, my upper lips, and of course on a individual control basis. Okay. Now, so far I rigged this so that it responds to the jaw rotations. And one exercise that you might want to do is figure out how you would do it to rig it in between these two controls instead. But I think you can already do that. Let's just delete these two guys. And it looks like we are done with our facial rig. Of course, I'm just going to select all these locators that we created. And we definitely need to make them smaller. Okay. So we're doing good. Let's keep working on other parts of our character, and so we can finish all the deformations for him, and we can move on to a different chapter of the course. So let's do that.